My parents decided to kick me out to make room for my golden sister, even though I was the one who had purchased the house. But karma has a way of catching up with people faster than they expect. I'm 36 years old and have spent the last 15 years climbing the corporate ladder as a senior manager at one of the leading investment firms on Wall Street. This story revolves around my complicated relationship with my sister, Sarah, who is 48, my parents, both in their early 80s, and the house I recently bought for them, which has become a frequent source of family strife. To understand how we arrived at this point, I need to take you back to the beginning. My parents were in their late 40s when I was born, making me an unexpected addition to the family. My mother often reminded me that they already had Sarah, who was 11 years old at the time, and that she was more than enough. It wasn't said with malice, but rather in a tone that made the situation worse. She would casually mention, "We didn't plan for you," while organizing Sarah's extracurricular activities or filling out her college applications. These seemingly innocent remarks served as a constant reminder of my status as an afterthought in our family, shaping my early years. I might not have been here if it weren't for my maternal grandparents' insistence. While my parents viewed me as an unplanned burden, my grandparents were thrilled at the prospect of having a second grandchild. From the very start, it was clear that I was an afterthought in my parents' lives. Every morning, as they dropped me off at my grandparents' house, my father would say to my grandfather, "You wanted her," while jingling his keys in his palm. "She's all yours." My grandparents' home became my sanctuary, a place where I felt genuinely loved and wanted. They ensured I was well fed and cared for, picked me up from school, helped me with my homework, and took me to the park. My grandfather, a retired math professor, spent countless hours teaching me about numbers and problem solving. He would often say, "Numbers never lie," and those lessons would later influence my professional decisions in ways I never anticipated, as they tell stories more honestly than people do. Every afternoon at their kitchen table, my grandmother would assist me with my schoolwork, making sure I understood everything. Her patience seemed boundless. Having taught high school before retiring, she would often say, "Knowledge is the one thing nobody can take away from you." In a stern yet caring tone, she also taught me to cook, framing it as a way to express my creativity rather than a chore. Those afternoons spent in the kitchen, reviewing my school day and learning to measure ingredients precisely, became some of my most cherished memories. My parents, generally weary and frustrated by the commute, would only come to pick me up late at night. "Madison," my grandmother would say as she tucked me in each night, "you're the best thing that ever happened to us." In those moments, I could almost forget that I wasn't wanted anywhere else, wrapped in her loving embrace. They became my emotional anchor, providing the security and affection I sorely lacked at home. My grandfather would often remind me, "Remember, sometimes the best things in life aren't planned." As I grew up, I learned to live as an afterthought in my own home while Sarah prepared for her bright future. She simply acted as if I didn't exist. She wasn't mean or cruel. She would lounge on the couch, chatting on the phone about boys and college applications, completely oblivious to me playing with my dolls in the corner of our shared living room. The disparity in how my parents treated Sarah and me was glaring and unending. My mother's delighted voice would ring out as she shared Sarah's accomplishments with relatives and friends. "Sarah got straight A's again," or "She made the debate team." They attended all of her school events, science fairs, and debate contests, while I was met with excuses like, "We're too tired." "We have to work, or you understand, don't you," for their conspicuous absence from my activities. My grandparents, on the other hand, were my biggest supporters, attending every school event with genuine pride and excitement. I had hoped that Sarah's departure to college would bring about a change at home, that I would finally be seen by my parents. I was completely mistaken. At 14, I went from being invisible to becoming the housekeeper. My mother would shout, "Madison," before I could even set down my backpack after school, "The house needs cleaning. Start with the bathrooms." I took over Sarah's chores along with a host of other responsibilities. I learned the ins and outs of the washing machine by heart, becoming a constant companion to cleaning, cooking, and maintaining a home for parents who barely acknowledged my presence. My father would say, "That's nice," my mother remarked, not bothering to lift her gaze from her plate. "But we can't afford it. We spent all our savings on your sister's wedding and even took out a loan for it. There's nothing left for college." I stuttered, barely able to get the words out, "But you paid for Sarah's college." My voice was barely a whisper. That was different, my mother replied dismissively. We saw potential in her. The silence that followed was deafening. You should get a job, save some money, and take out student loans. That's what responsible adults do, my father chimed in, his tone matter of fact. I had never dared to leave the table without being excused, but in that moment, I grabbed my phone with trembling hands and called my grandparents. By the time I stepped through their familiar front door, I was in tears. My grandfather's expression stiffened as he listened to my story, but I couldn't see the glimmer of understanding in his eyes. They exchanged a knowing look after I finished recounting everything. My grandfather took my hand and said, Madison, we've been saving for your education since the day you were born. We were expecting something like this. He returned from his study with a folder in hand, revealing bank statements that reflected years of diligent saving. You can choose any of those universities. We've got you covered. That evening, I packed my belongings and moved in with my grandparents. When I told my parents I was leaving, they were downstairs watching television and barely looked up. My mother simply said, whatever you think is best, her eyes glued to the screen. Did I sense relief in her voice? The years that followed were transformative. I chose to attend one of the top business schools to study financial analysis. Witnessing my parents' poor financial management likely fueled my desire to do things right. My professors quickly recognized my eagerness and natural aptitude for finance. Before long, I was staying after class to discuss complex financial concepts. For the first time in my life, someone other than my grandparents acknowledged my true potential. During my academic years, I was fortunate enough to secure prestigious internships at major financial firms. Each summer brought new opportunities and challenges. Senior managers were impressed by my analytical skills and attention to detail. During my performance review at Morgan Stanley, my boss remarked, "You have a natural instinct for this. We'd love to have you back next summer." Aside from the occasional phone calls with my grandparents, I kept my head down and focused on my studies, rarely thinking about my family. After graduation, I landed a job at one of the city's largest financial firms. I never imagined I would receive such a generous starting salary. I found a clean, secure one-bedroom apartment and felt a wave of gratitude wash over me each morning, knowing I only had to prepare breakfast for myself. As I immersed myself in new challenges, my career took off, and I received bonuses and promotions that I could never have envisioned in my younger years. Within 5 years, I had climbed to a senior position, managing complex portfolios and building strong client relationships. In the industry, I became known for my strategic thinking and analytical precision. Each accomplishment felt like a hidden affirmation that my parents had underestimated my abilities. Meanwhile, I learned from rare conversations with my grandparents that Sarah's marketing career was not progressing as she had hoped. Her husband, Mark, struggled to maintain steady employment, and they were constantly asking my parents for financial help. During one of our monthly calls, my grandmother informed me, "Your mother emptied her retirement account last month to help them with rent. They just can't say no to her." Over the course of a year, the situation worsened. Even with my parents' assistance, Sarah and Mark could no longer afford their rent. They, along with their twins, who were now 7, moved back into my old bedroom. My parents, who had once beamed with pride over Sarah's achievements, now found themselves responsible for her entire family in addition to their golden child. I kept my distance, focusing on my own personal and professional growth. Every bonus, promotion, and successful transaction served as a subconscious reminder that I wasn't the failure my parents had predicted. By my mid-30s, I had amassed significant investments and savings, including enough for a down payment on my own home. Then everything changed. My grandfather passed away unexpectedly from a massive heart attack. It was a devastating loss. He had been the father figure who stood by me when no one else did, more than just a grandfather to me. After that, my grandmother, who had been with him for over 50 years, seemed to lose her spark. She followed him less than 2 months later. In every sense, they were my true parents, and suddenly they were gone. At the funeral home, as I prepared for my grandmother's service, I heard my mother's voice behind me. From Mr. Henderson to his daughter, Sarah, the message read, "Remember, Sarah, that we gave you $200,000 right when you needed it most. We want you to respect our ultimate judgment just as much as we did your demands back then." My mother's cheeks drained of color, turning from a fiery red to a pale hue. Emily and Mark exchanged nervous glances while my father stared at the ground. After the notary finished his paperwork, my parents approached me in the parking lot, their previously calm demeanor replaced by an urgent tone. "Madison, honey, you must understand that we always assumed we'd inherit the house," my mother said, her voice shaky. "We're having trouble, but we were counting on it. With the mortgage and Emily's family expenses, we could really use the house," my father added, running a hand through his thinning hair. Emily chimed in, talking about her children's desire for a yard to play in, but I simply drove away, my mind racing. In the weeks that followed, I couldn't shake the thoughts of my grandparents' parting gift. My life had settled closer to the city, and while the house I inherited held countless memories, it was too large for me to manage alone. Meanwhile, I learned about my parents' mounting financial woes through our weekly conversations. Helping Emily and her family had drained their retirement savings, and they were struggling to keep up with their own mortgage payments. After much contemplation, I decided I would buy my parents a better house, one that was single-story, had a lovely garden, and was easier to maintain, using the money from selling my grandparents' house along with my own savings. It would be something cozy for their retirement years. When I shared my idea with them, they burst into tears of joy. After several weeks of house hunting, we finally found the perfect place, a charming ranch-style home with wide entrances and no steps, nestled in a quiet neighborhood. My parents couldn't stop expressing their happiness once the purchase was finalized. "A good housewarming party is exactly what we need," my father exclaimed. "It's the least we can do to make all the arrangements." "That would be lovely," I replied, planning to present them with the deed during the festivities. Weeks passed, and despite my busy schedule, I kept waiting for an invitation. "Oh, we're still planning," my mother would say. "You know these things take time." My father would add, "We want it to be perfect. We'll let you know soon." Their evasive responses began to annoy me for some reason. One evening, after yet another vague phone call from my mother, I decided to look up Emily on Facebook. We weren't connected on any social media platforms, and I hadn't seen her profile in years. To my surprise, I found a post from just hours ago. "I'm so excited for Mom and Dad's housewarming party this Saturday. I can't wait to celebrate with everyone in this stunning home." Numerous friends and family members had commented, confirming their attendance and sharing pictures of caterers being hired and decorations being set up. This wasn't a spontaneous gathering, weeks had clearly been spent planning it. I called my mother, my fingers trembling. "Hello, Mom. I wanted to ask more about the housewarming party. Do you have a date in mind yet?" "Oh, honey, not just yet," she replied casually. "Most likely in a few weeks. The logistics are still being worked out." As Saturday approached, I faced a dilemma: should I confront them or let it go? How could they exclude me from the festivities after everything I had done for them? I would soon find out, but not in the way I had anticipated. On Saturday, I parked a block away from the house I had bought for my parents and saw dozens of people mingling through the windows, including Emily's friends and relatives. My father was giving tours of the house, while my mother, adorned in her special occasion pearls, greeted guests at the entrance. The home was adorned with twinkling lights and welcoming banners, and laughter and music spilled out onto the street, indicating that they had spent weeks planning this housewarming party to which I had not been invited. For a while, I sat in my car, watching Emily's twins chase each other past groups of adults who were admiring them. I could see moving boxes with Emily's handwriting piled in the corner through the large bay window. The process of moving her family's belongings had already begun. Taking a deep breath, I quietly slipped in through the side entrance. The aroma of flowers and catered food filled the air, and I followed my father's voice to the living room, where he was chatting with a group of guests. "After all these years of hard work, we finally got our dream home," my father exclaimed. "Don't forget about Emily. She was a huge help with the down payment." My mother's face turned from pale to ashen, and my father began to ramble about his family responsibilities. Emily's self-assured smirk faltered as she realized her plans were unraveling. Despite my trembling hands, I pressed on, maintaining a steady voice. "I intended to give this to you tonight. I believe this could be a new beginning for all of us." Instead, you have shown me that nothing has changed. You can't do this, my mother shrieked, her voice rising in panic. We are your parents. No, I replied softly. You're merely the ones who gave birth to me. My true parents, my grandparents, showed me that family is more than just blood. They also taught me about finances, which is why I own this house while you do not. I turned to the surprised guests. I'm sorry, but this celebration is over. This is my residence, and I am asking everyone to leave. My parents, Emily, Mark, the twins, and all their guests left in tears, and I watched from the porch as they drove away one by one until the street was empty. The beautiful lights in the yard continued to twinkle mockingly, while half-empty drinks and discarded plates cluttered every surface. The house, which was meant to symbolize reconciliation, had become the final straw in our already strained relationship. A few weeks later, I learned that they had used the money from the sale of their previous home to buy a cramped apartment. Emily, Mark, and the twins were now crammed into a two-bedroom flat. They began calling me constantly, at first leaving voicemails filled with angry accusations. You've become so heartless, just like your grandparents warned us you would, and guilt-tripping messages like, how could you do this to your own family? I blocked their social media accounts, emails, and phone numbers. The house now stood empty, a stark reminder of everything that had gone wrong in our family. I had an appointment with a real estate agent the next day. Some relationships, like old photographs in a dusty album, are best left in the past. When I eventually have my own children, I've promised myself they won't have to compete for my attention or earn my love. Unlike my parents, I will love my children unconditionally, just as my grandparents did for me. That Saturday night, when I arrived at the house I had bought, I was not invited to my parents' housewarming party, which revealed every painful truth about my family. The window showcased dozens of visitors, catered food, and, most tellingly, moving boxes marked with Emily's handwriting. My father joyfully declared, after all our hard work, we finally purchased our dream home. I had snuck in through the side entrance. My mother praised Emily for supposedly assisting with the down payment, addressing questions about my absence with, "Oh, Madison's too focused on her career to care about family." The incident encapsulated every insult I had endured as a child, every instance of favoritism toward Emily, and every moment I had been treated as an afterthought. I had never experienced such clarity as I did standing in that doorway, witnessing my parents rewrite history by preparing to move my sister's family into my home without even asking me. Actually, I said, prompting the room to quiet down, I believe there's been a misunderstanding regarding the ownership of this house. I could read their true feelings on their faces: shock, shame, and ultimately indignation. My mother was the first to recover, her voice dripping with entitlement. What's done is done. The house is ours now, and Emily's family needs the space. I pulled out the ownership documents and the property deed. No, the house is mine. I never signed it over to you. I had planned to give it to you tonight, but that would clearly be a mistake. You can't do this, my mother exclaimed, panic rising in her voice. We are your parents. We have rights. The only rights you have, I continued calmly, are those I choose to grant you. And right now, I've decided to ask everyone to leave my property. What followed was a chaotic evacuation, with guests rushing out, plates of food still in hand, Emily's twins screaming in surprise, and my father trying to maintain some semblance of dignity while directing everyone to their cars. How could you do this to your own family? My mother's final attempt at manipulation fell flat against my newfound resolve. In the weeks that followed, the 5 of them were crammed into a tiny flat, and the messages began pouring in. My father wanted a re-evaluation, Emily begged with tears for her children's stability, and my mother accused me of cruelty, all of which I blocked. The empty house served as a reminder of what could have been.